30 years since the day of what became known as the ball of the century. The blonde bombshell, Shane Warne, was bowling his first ball in an Ashes game in England. It was a gloomy day. England were going well at about 1 for 80 when Shane Warne entered the attack. He ripped one, a leg spinner, pitched outside leg stump, took the off peg of Mike Gatting, who was stunned. And ever since then, in the years after, he stunned the cricket world. That is Shane Warne. We're joined now by one of his teammates on that tour, Brendon, Julian. Thanks very much for your time. So, on the tour, what were your first impressions of Shane Warne?
Good to talk to you, Tom. Look, I suppose the first impressions of Warney on that tour is that he'd already played Test cricket, so he already had some success in Sri Lanka. But up against England and playing in England is always a different kettle of fish. And I think even leading into that first Test match up at Old Trafford, Alan Border and Bobby Simpson sort of kept him at bay. He didn't play the one-day internationals. There were 3 one-days there. He didn't play too many county games as well. So I think they just really wanted to ease Warney into it. It was more about sort of, yes, we've got a leg spinner. Yes, he's got good reputation. But, playing in England against a pretty good side against England is never a big thing. And up against Mike Gatting, to bowl a delivery like that first up at the start of a Test match and his first delivery in the series was, something special. And it actually grew from there. I don't necessarily think it was a ball of the century at the start, but it certainly was at the end.
These things have a way of doing that, don't they? And I guess you had the understated Richie Benaud, of course. He's done it, and he didn't need to say any more. I loved the sort of build-up to it, but it sort of is a bit deceptive, I guess, because Shane Warne always looked pretty calm. I mean, he was a competitive beast, but he looks pretty calm. He goes down and bowls it. He spoke before, though, Shane Warne, about the lead-up to it. He was so nervous. You mentioned he had his breakout tour, Brendon, in Sri Lanka, but he was still so nervous. He was up chain smoking all night, basically, and couldn't sleep. So he must have been a bit of a wreck when he took the ball.
Well, he did smoke a lot and he didn't sleep much anyway. So that was something probably stock standard for Warney. That particular morning was pretty cold. It was overcast. I was at mid-on and I remember him bowling the first one to me as you normally do in a warm-up, and he could barely get the ball out of his hand. And he was rubbing his shoulder saying, geez, it's pretty cold out here. Should I take my jumper off? I'm just hoping it'll land it on a length more than anything. Classic Warney, though. It just turned into one of those things. I mean, he knew how big it was. There was plenty of talk about him on that tour, but he needed to get off to a good start. And as you said, we were 1 for 80 at that stage. That was my first Test match. I actually got a wicket in that first Test match. No one even congratulated me because they kept showing Warney's delivery by Gatting. So for me, it was a bit of a non-event, but for Warney, it was something special.
I went through the scorecard, actually, and I saw your name. I think a 1 for and a none for, but what a game to debut in, Brendon. And, you can say, actually, before Mike Gatting, he bowled a ball to me and it wasn't much chop. There was a bit of risk in it. Look, as a very, very ordinary leg spinner myself that, grew up with captains that sort of thought leg spin should go at about 2.4 and over, thanks to Shane Warne. When you try to rip one like that, first ball of the innings, you can get it wrong so easily. I think that's the other interesting thing about it. He never shied away from a risk. Rather than bowl, let's bowl a safe one on off stump and make sure I don't get hit for 4. This was a ball that had a lot of risk. You pitch it up, it goes a bit too far down leg, you get smacked for 4, and it's that sort of inauspicious start. But he always attacked it head on, right?
Well, you're right. I mean, look, I think one of the great things with Warney was that he was deadly accurate. And for a leg spinner, as you said, it's never easy to bowl a line of leg break. But he never bowled too many bad balls. I mean, as you can see with other leg spinners, captains like to put a deep point out and a deep backward square. Warney didn't have that. He didn't have the deep point because he never bowled too many half trackers. He always knew that if you'd always pitch the ball up, you got a better chance of getting a wicket. So I don't necessarily think he probably thought I was going to dip it and bounce outside leg stump, but it was certainly going to be pitching it up. But Old Trafford is funny, though, because it was a real dusty pitch. It was quite overcast that day, and we were thinking about playing 2 spinners. The other spinner would have been Tim May, but that's how I came into the Test match. It was raining in the morning, and we actually won the toss and batted first, so that allowed the quick bowlers to sort of, have a day off, basically, and bowl the second day on day 2 of that Test match. So by that stage, the pitch had dried out a little bit and it was quite crusty. So it was always going to turn. You just didn't know it was going to turn that much. But, when you're bowling in England, you've got to make sure that your line and lengths are right. That's one of the big things about bowling England. You can't afford to be too short, too wide, even if you're an off spinner, leg spinner, or quick bowler. But that was one of the beauties of Warney. He was deadly accurate. Didn't bowl too many bad deliveries, and he could sort of set up batsmen, and he could sort of execute his plan where, often a lot of bowlers can't execute because they can't quite get it right at that particular stage when they want it to work for them. But he was so good at that.
He's the only bowler I remember that spinner watching. He'd get hit for 6 and he'd smile because he'd go, "Oh, good, they're playing shots." Whereas most spinners, myself included, would just go, "No, they're going to do that 5 times this over."
Oh, look, one of the great things with Warney, though, even if he bowled a bad delivery, he would often sort of give you the impression that he meant to bowl that bad delivery. But, he was a big theatre and he was a gambler. He'd always, he had the poker face. That's what he loved playing. But he was good enough to get away with it. That's the beauty of Shane Warne. It's not necessarily those big deliveries that he bowled, but it was all the other deliveries around creating the illusion that he was bowling something special.
Exactly. I loved watching a couple of docos on him where some of the new deliveries he just made up, and people were treating them like landmines. He set the scene for years of dominance of Australia, of England, in England. It's been a while since we've been able to say that, though. The current crop, people are talking about their last chance maybe to really put an exclamation mark on their career in England. What do you think tactically? Bazball, all the talk about it, Brendon. Do we need a tactic for it, or do you stick to your game plan, bowl accurately and let them undo themselves? What do you think the Australian approach should be?
Yeah, you're spot on. I don't think you change your game plan. I mean, if they want to play that brand of cricket, that's great. That's great for Test cricket. But, winning a series in England is all about winning 1 or 2 Test matches. You don't have to win every single Test match. Not every Test match has to be played for a week. Well, I think if we're leading in the series, I wouldn't be giving them a chance at all. I don't think Australia need to play that aggressive line. England is like that anyway. Our quick bowlers will bowl really, really well. I think it's going to get down to the batting. If our batting can get through it, I think we should dominate them over there. I think Anderson will be okay, but I can't see him playing, 6 Test matches or 5 Test matches. Jofra Archer's a massive block for them as well. And I think their top order is very fragile. I think their top 3, you can rip through those first couple of 3 pretty quickly, and then the middle order will be under a lot of pressure. And if they want to come out and play that aggressive approach, and that's great for us. But I don't think they can bat that way against our bowling. And if they do, I think it only comes into our favour. So I don't think the Aussies will change their game plans too much.
It's going to be a fascinating series. We get normally a few draws in England. We might not. I mean, I know we always get weather, but some of the Bazballs just, they have 3-day Test matches. So I know you say you don't necessarily need to win every match, Brennan, but it might be sort of a result every match.
Well, I think, Tom, I think it will be, mate. Like I said, I think bowling sides are pretty good, and I think they'll knock over batsmen, and the batsmen will look to be aggressive. But it might get down to a Cam Green in the middle order, or it might get down to Kerry in the middle order, sort of grinding out a great 60. Look, and that could be the Dave Warner and Khawaja at the top. They don't need to peel off hundreds after hundreds, but a fighting 70 or an 80 that gets you in a position to win a Test match. Just what might be needed to win a Test match over there. So, this series will be decided in 1 or 2 sessions where the team takes the advantage, gets that run out, takes a great match, or bowls a great spell of bowling, or bats really well for a period. So it'll get down to those final moments.